Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another round of the episode of the Extra Rounds podcast.
Round.
Another round.
Each episode's a round, baby.
This is round 38, I want to say.
It's a long fight.
This is round 38 of the Extra Rounds podcast, if we're going that way. We're going to talk to a lot of things today. UFC, the Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather thing keeps picking up steam, and between every episode, new stuff happens, so it's like a conversation that never dies. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Bellator. There's been some big things happening over there. And then later in the show, we have a special guest joining us, Robin Black, famed MMA analyst. He's known for his video breakdowns, his catchphrases, his energy. And he's doing his own thing with his own podcast and show. We'll talk to him a little bit about that. Also, we had Jose Shorty Torres into the studio yesterday for another episode of the Extra Rounds podcast that's already uploaded to iTunes, but we also have a video being uploaded to Fansided soon. So be on the lookout for that, or you can, if you're impatient, you can listen to it on iTunes right now. He's the Titan FC flyweight champion at Titan FC in 43 or 44. I don't remember the number. In May 19th, he's fighting for the bantamweight title. He sat down, talked for an hour. He lives in Chicago. We're in Chicago, so he was able to come in, brought his title belt. It was a great thing. Great. We talked about his humble upbringing on the south side of Chicago. We talked about his journey, his career. This is a guy who travels around the world to train. He goes to Jackson Wing. He trains at a Combat Dough in Cicero outside of Chicago. Then he goes to Team Elevation and trains with TJ Dillashaw, and he kind of broke down how that works and the stigma that TJ's developed as a fierce competitor when he's training with people. So we talked about all those things, and you can catch them all on the podcast. Make sure to check it out. He's a great guy. He's a guy who got a bright future. He's 4-0, but most people know that he's an extensive amateur fighter. He's 25-1, 2 world titles. The future's really bright for this guy. Yeah. He's not your average 4-0 fighter, still trying to gain some experience. He knows what he's doing.
And I just got, as you were talking, one of our listeners who's called in and left a message before, Valentino Ortiz III, had just sent a message, email saying, "Good job, Mike." I guess he just listened to episode 37 with Shorty Torres. It is a great episode. You guys got to check that out. If you're subscribed, it's already in your feed. If you haven't, you should do it. Good stuff like that gets popping all the time. Extra rounds, baby.
Yeah, no, we just need more fighters to come to Chicago and train here. Maybe one day we'll do a Rufus Sport episode, not too far away.
That'll be fun.
So, anyways, first things first, we wanted to talk about Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather.
And specifically the way Dana White is talking about that fight now, right? So Dana for a long time was just basically poo-pooing the possibility of it, saying Conor needs to talk to him, Floyd needs to talk to him. This fight goes through the UFC. He's still saying that. But he's talking like a guy who already has the job of promoting that hypothetical boxing match. Now he's going on big talk shows and saying, I don't see how this could not happen. I think now he's talking about, how he sees the fight going down and promoting Conor McGregor and saying, he could win this. So I don't know if that, Mike, means the fight is closer to happening or if it's Dana White's way of applying for the job of being some type of co-promoter of this. But it's a marked rhetorical shift for Dana White, not being completely opposed to this matchup, now seeming to say it's inevitable and he's excited about it.
Yeah, there's a quote I think that came out yesterday or the day before that it's no guarantee that Mayweather wins this fight.
Right. Was he on Conan when he said that? I forget.
Maybe. He was on Conan talking. He's been in TMZ videos. There's another TMZ kind of style interview that's out on, but I don't think it was TMZ where they kind of caught him off guard, and he was gracious enough to answer some questions.
Which I don't know why anyone ever talks to TMZ. You must love attention if these assholes come up to you with a camera.
I love Conor. There's the connection between TMZ and the UFC, and Conor didn't like the way that they had portrayed something or whatnot, and
we got some good gift wrapping going on in the studio right now. By the way.
And Conor, when he was leaving the Nate Diaz press conference, he had that little run-in with him, and that was one of my favorite moments.
How is that not everyone's interaction all the time with anyone connected to that scavenging outlet of TMZ? Like, it's so predatory. It's so gross.
But when you're someone trying to build a name or establish something.
Yeah.
There's a certain audience to, I guess, take advantage of.
Yeah, and then you better be ready for when they kick you when you're down, like Ronda Rousey. Ronda, you know, she was all about talking to them, and then afterwards when they're mocking her, you got to live with both sides of that coin, because they're evil. Like they wanna kiss your ass to take advantage of your audience, and then they wanna take advantage of that audience in reverse once you slip up and really make fun of you. It's a weird thing, and God forbid you actually become real famous, not just MMA famous. Then they're digging around all over the place. It's not to say they've accidentally served the public good a couple times, like with the Ray Rice video. But yeah, I didn't expect to get into my TMZ bashing thing. They don't really need my bashing them. Speaks for themselves, but man, I don't get why people talk to them. Unless you don't realize it's TMZ, because any of these tabloids, man, it's such a weird thing to sit down like People magazine. Here's my baby, and like these are the same people that are like snooping through your window blinds. Like what? How can you let them into your house?
I mean,
anyway,
I'd be kind of stoked if TMZ was waiting outside my house for me.
You would the first
It'd be
time.
like a sign that I made it.
Yeah, and then the 30th time. You're a little bit annoyed probably.
But, either way, Dana White's embracing it, and he's embracing the idea of this fight now. There's a Fox Sports report that comes out that's saying McGregor's team is, angling for September. So
it's got to be May or September, right? The big Mexican holidays. You got to take advantage of
May's
Independence or Cinco de Mayo. Oh, yeah, May's not. That's why it makes sense in September. But
that's why Floyd was always fighting May, September.
Yeah, the Mexican-American audience is huge. That and like over 60-year-olds are like the audience for boxing predominantly right now. So you need to do that around big events if you can.
And it looks like we're headed towards this being more of a boxing event than an MMA event, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't think there was any. I know it was fun to discuss, but there was nothing outside of Dana White pontificating to ever indicate that this would ever be an MMA event in any capacity. And also it was, I think it was a disingenuous suggestion for him to say he would stack that card. Oh, really? You're going to spend a few $1 million for no reason? Because you don't need an undercard to make that a huge event. He wouldn't do that. They're cutting costs everywhere. They're firing everyone and their secretary and letting top 5 guys go. They're not going to stack a card that doesn't need stacking in order to make money. I think Dana White's kind of been, like, once he realized that maybe he didn't have a winning case to stop McGregor from doing this, he's kind of been applying to have a piece of this in any way, shape, or form. Because you're right. I mean, it seems it's just, even Dana White is only talking about it as a boxing event. He's the only one that was ever, like, kind of suggesting there could be anything else attached with it.
Well, that's your weekly check-in with Conor McGregor and Floyd.
Yeah.
More talk. Everything's ramping up. It looks like it's going to really happen. I just hope it doesn't happen on my honeymoon in June. That's all I'm hoping for.
You stand a good chance of that.
So anyways, we've talked. We said we were going to talk about Bellator. Bellator's been doing some big things. They've signed some big names. Lorenz Larkin, Ryan Bader, most notably. 2 big names that kind of got away. Ryan Bader's the guy who was in the heavyweight title picture or light heavyweight title picture not so long ago, and is not the typical, or what was the typical aging fighter going to Bellator after kind of being sent to the farm by the UFC. This is a guy who chose to leave. And it's interesting. I talked to some of the other fighters. I talked to Chase Gormley, Bellator fighter, yesterday, and was talking to him about the fighter's perception and what they think. And, everybody kind of expected this to start happening when Scott Coker came on board. Everything that he did with Strikeforce, that he could legitimize this and make this a contender. And they were saying that the sponsorship dollars, he thinks that the sponsorship dollars are just that valuable to the fighters, and that's why fighters are making that decision.
Very interesting. They
can make less guaranteed in show money, but they can make more in sponsorships. And, the numbers from Spike aren't necessarily horrible. A pay-per-view, if it gets like 500,000 buys, is a small audience. If this is an event that gets, 1 million, 1.5 million views in Spike for free, like,
you can leverage that for sponsorships.
Exactly. It's more eyeballs. I know working in the digital media publishing thing, it's not always about page views. It's about users. It's about sets of eyes. So that rings true. So what are your thoughts? Are you surprised by this, or did you expect this?
I am kind of surprised. Like you mentioned, Mike, it's a departure from the way the UFC has done business with free agents in a real significant way. The way they've done business with free agents for a long time, at least since like Zuffa came in, Dana White and Fertitta Brothers, and Dana White's still around even after they sold it to WME IMG. It's interesting because we'd see older past their prime, big stars go elsewhere, right? And we've had Tito Ortiz go, and Hoist Gracie or Ken Shamrock, or we've seen that. But you'd also see things like Yushin Okami, who's still a top 10, top 5 guy, or John Fitch, top 10, top 5 guy, off of losses, get cut or not get renewed and go other places. You'd see that type of thing. You'd see even years before, you might see something like when Frank Trigg got let go. When Frank Trigg got let go, he was probably the number 2 welterweight in the world, or number 3 welterweight in the world. But he had lost to Matt Hughes twice. You can't, and they were a hard line, like, well, what are we going to do with this guy? We're paying him a decent amount in their view, and we're kind of out of matchups for him. He'd lost, he would lose to other guys as well, to George St. Pierre and stuff. So you would see things like that, basically top guys who, and they've mostly been guys over the years, obviously the women are new to the UFC, the top guys who were coming off of a loss. And you'd be like, man, they let him go after just one loss, or things like that. But what we really hadn't seen, and fans can correct me here, I know there's always outliers, there's always exceptions. But by my memory, Mike, it's never been a common thing. It's always been a rare thing for top 5, top 10 guys in divisions who were on winning streaks for the UFC to let them go, for the UFC to let them test free agency. Let's remember this. The UFC hates to let their fighters get to the point where they fight out their contract. The MO is to sign them to a new contract extension when they have one fight left. So the fact that so many people have been fighting out their contract, that's interesting. And I think the UFC is trying to make a statement against that, saying, don't try to test us with free agency. We'll lowball you afterwards. We're not that interested in you if you do that. I think that's a line that they're drawing. And I think after that, another line they're drawing is like, we're not interested. We're not most interested in making sure that most of the best fighters in each division are in the UFC. That was a big thing for the UFC for a long time, especially after Pride before Zuffa had raided a lot of the top UFC stars, taking guys like Mark Kerr, Mark Coleman, Kevin Randleman, signing Bas Rutten to do other stuff. He never ended up fighting for Pride. Like the UFC at one point, a long time ago, got some of their biggest stars. Hoist Gracie got raided. And when Zuffa came over, as best they could, they lost some top guys like Murilo Bustamante as well. But the best they could, they started building up. It was very important to their, to be seen as legitimate for athletic commissions, to be seen legitimate by fans. They really said, we're going to build up the deepest divisions, as many of the deepest divisions as we can. And certainly once they bought Pride, once they bought the WC, once they bought Strikeforce, they were able to lay claim to having most of the best fighters in each division. That was a very important thing for them to have, I think in principle, and I think it helps them in business long term as well. You can develop stars, more stars that way. That was very important to them. I don't think it's important to them anymore, Mike. I think these things, like letting Ryan Bader go, who is the number 1 contender in the light heavyweight division after this fight, literally, in my view, I think he's won 5 out of 6 or something like that. He's won 2 straight. He's a top guy there. Letting Lawrence Larkin, who I think is a top 10 guy, who's also a proven winner, go, to let other guys get close to signing with Bellator, like Aljamain Sterling, who at the time was a top 5 guy. I'm sure he's still top 10. And then there's some European fighters that they've let go and then re-sign. This is a real sign from the UFC, in my view, Mike, that it isn't a top priority to make sure that they keep most of the best fighters in each division in the UFC. I think it's interesting, especially when you look at it in the context of they're closing down offices internationally. They're closing a lot. They're letting go a lot of the back office people, the front office people. A lot of production costs are being cut as well. And it's manifesting in like the posters we see, the commercials we see. They're really, really downsizing. The new owners took on, I believe, around $2 billion in debt, and I think they're really cutting costs. And it's a short strategy. They're like, hey, if you're not already a star that we're making millions off of, you're not that much of a priority. Maybe that's smart, but I don't think it serves you well, by the way, 10 years down the road. Because if you don't think you can promote Ryan Bader or Lorenz Larkin, who look like fucking action figures, who doesn't get more handsome or like more ripped or more exciting of fighters than those guys, if you can't market them, who are already like in the top 5, top 10 of the divisions, then who are you interested in? If you don't think you can promote those guys and make money off of them, you don't know how to promote. So I think it's really interesting. This is either a new direction or a transition phase. If it's a new direction, they're going to find some problems. I think 5-10 years from now, because they're gonna let a lot of stars go, or let a lot of future stars go. So it's an interesting shift, because I can't remember anything like this happening to the scale that it's happening before.
You mentioned his Bader's record. He's 7 out of 8.
Oh wow!
Going back to December of 2013 when he beat Anthony Parash at UFC Fight Night 33, Hunt versus Bigfoot.
Thanks. For
his one loss is to Anthony Johnson, which was the January of 2016 at UFC on Fox 18.
A couple years ago now.
A year and a couple months.
Yeah, a year and a couple months.
But I mean, he was on a 5-fight win streak going into that, and he's won 2 since before leaving.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, the thing that's interesting is that, like, in football, you have the franchise tag, where, like, if your contract runs out, they can tag you so that you don't leave. That doesn't exist in the UFC, and there's nothing they can do to force you to sign a contract before it expires. Like, people are getting smarter about it, and they understand how the free market works, and they're taking advantage of it. Some have elected to re-sign. Some have elected to leave. Some value the perceived notoriety that comes with that and the competition, and some value the sponsorship. I think some fighters have gotten smarter about capitalizing on sponsorship without wearing it, where some still need to wear the sponsors. Does that make sense? Like the ads and whatnot. But it's interesting to see. I mean, if this continues to happen, like, that's going to be it's going to be something. If this is a trend that continues, I mean, they're going to eventually be 2 people with semi-equal talent pools. The only difference might be is that the biggest of stars will still, of course, be in the UFC. Your Conor McGregor's, Ronda Rousey's, whoever be. But it's going to be really interesting that, you know, part of it's going to be who comes along and signs the up-and-coming guys that are going to be the stars. And the thing that's really interesting is, like, a guy like Jose Shorty Torres, he said that the UFC didn't want to sign him after he won the flyweight title and defended the flyweight title in Titan, that he fought Pedro Nobre, and who's a UFC vet, if I remember correctly, that he was told that he beat him too decisively, that they wanted to see him come back from adversity. Like, could you imagine telling that to Mike Tyson, being like, hey man, you're knocking people out in 15 seconds. Like, if you just could, like, let the guy get the upper hand and then win, like that would be better for us. Or Ronda Rousey, like, everything was. Remember she went on that run where she beat 4 people in, like, under 2 minutes or 2 minutes and 6 seconds or something?
Yeah, that really hurt her marketability. No, I think, I mean, like, I get it that they want to see more from him to see what he's made of, I guess. But that's weird. You're going to pay him chump change anyway. Sorry, Shorty, to, like, the reality is they don't get paid well in the UFC until you're, a champion. Even then, you're underpaid. So, like, you're gonna. That's so weird. What do you think he's gonna do? Collapse?
But, like, what if Bellator's like, you know what? I like that guy. We don't have a flyweight division yet.
Yeah, let's center it around this.
Yeah, this is a guy who's about to fight for a second title in bantamweight. Like, they could throw him in the bantamweight title. Lorenz Larkin, as we were talking about, he beat Neil Magny, who was on like a 10-fight win streak or something at the time they fought.
And he's still kicking butt. Neil Magny's beaten Kelvin Gastelum, Johnny Hendricks in the last few months.
Yeah, and then he beat Jorge Masvidal, who's in contention, or his name's being thrown around for a welterweight title shot.
One more win away from a title shot.
Right, he's about to fight Damian Maia. If he wins that, like, he might be the next welterweight contender. And this Lorenz Larkin beat him in May.
Beat Robbie Lawler years ago. Yeah, we don't need that guy. Like, what? It's so weird. I mean, listen, man, the welterweight division is almost the Bellator's welterweight division is almost on par with the UFC's right now. The light heavyweight division as well. Don't talk to me about John Jones. God bless his little heart. I don't know if John Jones is a fighter anymore. So we're looking at Daniel Cormier, who's better than everyone in the world, sure. But underneath him, light heavyweight, outside of the top 5, you just let that guy go. A few years ago, you let another guy in the top 5 go, and Phil Davis. Like, you're kind of getting drained here.
Who's the champion right now, I believe?
Phil Davis in Bellator, yeah.
But it's it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it will be.
But
if Bellator can ever sell tickets, because they can't sell 5 right now, they're going to prove me wrong. They'll be like, Scott Coker's going to be like, here's 7. Here's receipts for the 8 seats I sold in San Jose. It's like they can't sell any tickets. They have a really good product. If they ever learn how to sell some tickets, they can do some damage in this
and I think
market.
that's been part of the issue is they still kind of rely on the fighter selling tickets
it's so
for
low,
the undercard
it's so
people.
Low market.
But
it's so
the
weird.
but they're also in low market places. They do
that's true.
Windstar in Oklahoma, which
Hammond
is like a hour and a half or so north of Dallas. They do like the Mulvane Kansas show, the San Jose, the Temecula's.
You think that strategy is maybe hurting their ability to sell tickets?
Yeah, like who like I lived in Dallas and I went to school in Norman, so I drove past that Windstar all the time. Like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Like there's no population. So to get people in Dallas to go to Thackerville is a taller task than to get them to go to the American Airlines Arena, which is just down the street. And the other thing is like you don't want to. American Airlines is a big venue. Like the UFC doesn't sell out every arena they go to. They put curtains for fight night once to block off the upper deck, and they just sell the lower bowl.
Totally.
If you don't want to do something like that, there's smaller venues in Dallas. I mean, this is a city where the football stadiums for high schools are bigger than college stadiums.
Yeah.
And it costs millions of dollars. Like there's basketball arenas.
And that's true of every big city. There's
Right.
smaller arenas
Or
in every big city.
A local university.
Yeah.
Like
Totally. It'll be interesting to see, Mike, then, March 31st, Bellator is coming not to Chicago. They're coming to Rosemont, which is just outside of Chicago. But it's in spirit maybe closer than Hammond, Indiana, where they often go to this casino. Like, it'll be interesting. And big events happen there, like big stars go and do concerts. It'll be interesting
WrestleMania was hosted there twice.
No kidding. See, okay, so it's a big venue.
This was like in the 80s or early 90s or something. But
it's a big deal.
Right, like see
how they sell there.
They just did back-to-back nights of WWE shows at that Rosemont Arena.
Oh, did they really?
Raw, SmackDown, Monday,
that.
Tuesday shows.
So that'd be a good indicator. How much can they sell for that with Rampage there?
And there's a lot of marketing going on around town, like you see the billboards and whatnot, but they also announced that they're considering the pay-per-view model now. Or not considering, they're doing a pay-per-view show. Bellator 180 is going to be a pay-per-view. It's going to be headlined by Chael Sonnen and Vanderlei Silva, if that fight ever comes to fruition.
They've only done one other one, right?
In New York. So it's going to be a pay-per-view. So now they're exploring that.
The smaller garden or the theater in the garden?
I want to say it's in Brooklyn, but I can't remember.
Brooklyn. Okay, cool. Interesting. That's cool. I missed
the Barclays
that.
Center,
So because they've only done like one other pay-per-view ever, right?
I don't remember, but that's part of the appeal of it is that it's like you can watch this for free on TV.
True.
Now you got somebody to pay for Sonnen and Silva. Now that's a fight that kind of tugs at the heartstrings of MMA fans because we wanted to see it, especially if you watch that when they coached against each other on the Brazilian Ultimate Fighter, which I did and struggled through the subtitles to watch it.
It was worth it.
Just because they advertised the fight that happened, and they keep showing. They would keep teasing that until like the next episode. But, those are two guys who don't like each other.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. I mean, do you think back, years interviews of Sonnen, some of his most notable quotes are directed at Vanderlei Silva. And Anderson Silva. But Vanderlei in this.
Generally.
But that'll be interesting to see what kind of response that gets.
That really will be. Yeah. See if they can break 100,000 on that. That'll be very interesting. It's such a tough. I'm not in this business, so it's tough. But like, you have a little bit of a task, even with two big stars like Vanderlei and Chael, who have been inactive in recent years. You have a little bit of a task when you don't have fight footage of theirs at your disposal, other than Chael Sonnen losing very quickly to Tito Ortiz, right? Like, you have a storytelling challenge. So it'll be interesting to see how good their storytelling is in their promos and stuff, because they certainly have big stars. Those are big stars, and the big stars in Bellator. The older guys have been able to draw good ratings. It'll be very interesting to see if they can do decent pay-per-views.
The key is, will they be able to innovate and make their show different enough from the UFC to make it appealing? They have like one little wrinkle that's a little bit different, like on their clock in the bottom corner. It's got like a tick down thing.
So you mean like the production?
Right, the production value of it. And, like they have the red and blue gloves, which makes it more identifiable, whereas like the UFC does just the tape.
Yeah.
Which, if some people may never notice that, but I know others do. My fiance in particular, she really hates when a fighter's wearing blue but has red tape, or is wearing red with blue tape.
It's confusing. And fighters worry about this too, by the way.
Well, there's one fight where she wore it, where she was watching with me. It was a fighter in red with blue tape versus a fighter in blue with red tape. So then the icons would show the corner color or the tape color, but they were wearing the opposite color. And she was confused.
You know what? Fighters worry. This is a little inside baseball stuff. That's good you mentioned. Chrissy gets confused about that because judges do. Or at least fighters worry a lot that judges get confused by this. In fact, some fighters I've had conversations where they are sure like its decision went a certain way because of that. So they're really like worried about what color they're wearing for that.
I'm in the red corner and you want me to wear blue?
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
I'm wearing red. That guy can wear white or something.
That happens.
The other thing, while we're talking about the production value of the thing, World Series of Fighting, they had a show this weekend, World Series of 35, 3 title fights at the Turning Stone something or another in New York. They vacated bantamweight title for Marlon Morris, who's coming to the UFC. Then they had Lance Palmer defend his belt against Andre Harrison, and who's 15-0, 16-0 now, beat Lance Palmer to become the title. And then in the main event, it was Blagoy Ivanov fighting Sean Jordan, a UFC veteran, for the heavyweight title. Knocked him out in under 2 minutes. But they've added new wrinkles through their broadcast to try and compete. And, it's competing indirectly. I don't think that's the sole motivator, but it's definitely a motivator. I think they're just trying to make it a better product to consume for people watching. But those things will help them stand out. So one of which was they unveiled, I don't know if you watched, but one of which was
I saw your post about it.
The referee cam, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
There was a lot of decisions on that card, so you didn't get to see a whole lot of it.
Did they cut to that live on television?
I believe so.
Oh, jeez. I
believe so. They cut to it right when he went in to stop.
To give someone a seizure.
Yeah, and which is interesting, and it definitely had a new wrinkle, and there was a lot of positive response on social media. People loved it. I think for the technical side of things, it can add an interesting wrinkle because it could add. It's like the pylon camera in the NFL when they're trying to see if the ball extended across the goal line. This is like, why did the fight get stopped? If it's controversial, you can see what the referee saw. Yeah. So the applications of that could be tremendous. But they've also done other things. They changed the way they walk out. Bellator already has this great production value in that regard. But they also trade playing with some minor things like the sound, having it tapped into each corner. So you got more of that.
That's cool.
So,
I like that type of stuff.
If Bellator does that and can kind of embrace trying to do things their way, which they have for the most extent with their walkouts and everything, they can kind of craft their own unique thing and maybe make headway without the Conor McGregors.
What if they just need more people with hoods entering the ring? There's promos with Steph and Bonner.
Hoodies? Oh, that hood. I thought you meant hoodies.
No, full mask.
I was like, hoodies and beanies, that's a given.
Weird plot lines. No, I'm joking. I like that. Refs, and I'm not trying to be this guy. I know it takes the fun out of it. If refs are being given a job by the promoter, because refs don't work for the promoter, those refs at the very least need to get compensated extra for that shit. If I'm wearing this, I've got to have this hunk of thing around. It's a weird line to be crossing. It's a cool one. Pride used to do that, and you'd see it on replays. They would cut to it not live, but in replay, and it was kind of cool. I like it. But it's an interesting mixing of things there.
At first, I was thinking it'd be a GoPro strapped to the head. You see, if you ever go to a music festival, you see people with GoPro strapped to their head, their chest, everything.
The cool people at music festivals wear those, right?
The less cool people, the less cool people have their phones out. I'm who's ever gonna watch you walk? Are you gonna go back and watch you walking around Lollapalooza? But anyways, it was a Google Glass device, so it was really kind of subtle.
That's cool.
Yeah, I talked to Carlos Silva, the World Series of Fighting CEO, about it, and he said that they worked with the referees in the couple days prior to make sure everything was comfortable and whatnot. But he promised, this is a big initiative of what we're doing at World Series of Fighting. We're trying to find new ways to make the broadcast unique, and he compared it a lot to the yellow line on football broadcasts. That helped educate people, and that showed people where they needed to get to, and that changed the way that people were able to view the sport and consume it and make it easier to consume and more popular. And by giving you this information, he's that's what we're looking we're trying to find the yellow line of MMA. And I asked him if he felt like he found it. He's I think we have it. He's over the course of the year, they're going to reveal a couple new technologies or wrinkles or whatever for every show. But so that'll be interesting to watch. And if Bellator does something like that, they get more of these people coming over in their prime, then we're looking at somebody who could seriously contend with the UFC for.
That's a good point. The landscape might change again.
Yeah,
more competition. Very interesting.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's not, and not for labor at least. Not for the fighters.
Not for labor, but also for the consumer. More quality no more matchups people want to see, better viewing product for the viewers, all that kind of.
Sure. No, you're right. You want me to give, I saw that we kind of steamrolled through. Do you want me to give Robin a call, see if we can get him on the line?
We can give Robin a call. I always worry that we're going to talk or never have anything to talk about, but it seems like once we just start talking MMA, things just kind of go off the way.
We kind of like this stuff. So.
As he tries to get Robin on the phone, I'll entertain you folks at home. We sometimes try to come up with segments to talk about, and sometimes we get worked up about a topic and we just kind of go. But I'm telling you, there's more cohesive thoughts sometimes that we just don't ever get to because the discussion's going a way that we're enjoying.
So you're welcome, because we like this stuff. We hope you like it too. It's fun to get going.
And again, I said this earlier in the show, but if you weren't turning in right at the beginning, we did an interview with Titan FC flyweight champion Jose Shorty Torres yesterday. We've uploaded the audio. It's already up to in iTunes, TuneIn, Google Play, Stitcher, all those podcast places. But we have also we're uploading the video to the website fansided.com right now.
It's awesome. It's so good. The interview's so fun. I wish I could have been part of it, man.
Yeah,
awesome.
He's fighting for the bantamweight title in May. Could be UFC fighter. I mean, undefeated professional record, 25-1 as an amateur. He's on a 29-fight win streak. Like, think about that. 29-fight win streak.
He's a next generation type dude.
Yeah, local Chicago guy. We talked about his humble upbringings in Chicago on the South Side. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast and check that out on iTunes.
That's a lot of fun. All right, let's try. I'm dialing Robin Black right now. See if he's available over in Toronto.
Hello?
Mr. Robin Black, it's Elias. I'm here with Mike Dice. You're live, my friend. Thanks for being on the Extra Rounds podcast.
Hey, no problem, man. Good hanging with you guys.
Absolutely, man. We're so stoked. In last week's episode, we kind of teased. We didn't reveal that you were going to be on the show. We kind of teased that we had someone we were super, super stoked to be talking to, and then we put it out on Twitter. We know our listeners are just as excited to hear from you, man. I feel like, and you and I have talked off the air about this, but I really, really, really feel strongly that this is, at least for me as a fan of your work, Robin, this is the most exciting part of your analyst, your fight analyst career so far. You have so many podcasts going on right now. I'm looking at the numbers of your YouTube subscribers are just spiking in the last week. It's just crazy how much new cool stuff you're doing. We all know you for the breakdowns. You're interviewing more people. You're going into the fight psychology. You're still doing breakdowns and previews. I mean, you're doing so much so much new content. Do you feel extra amped right now, or is that just something that me as a fan is feeling?
Yeah, no, something weird is going on for sure. Today is day 8 of my YouTube channel. To be honest, it didn't exist 9 days ago. I was working at Fight Network 15 days ago. I got a phone call that they were shutting down production. I was with my wife in San Diego, so I was away from the ability to do my work, and she travels for work. She's in a musical. So I came home. I was supposed to be I would have been back at Fight Network on the Monday, and on Tuesday I made a YouTube channel, put it up, shot 2 pieces of content, and now 6 or 7 days later we have 10 different things that we've done, but it's been fascinating. Like, I'm so happy. I feel so pleased with my reaction to the situation. Like, I could have just turtled up and waited for the ref to stop it. You know what I mean? And instead, I stood up and started swinging. And I feel really excited. And I'm working with a couple of guys, an old friend, Aaron, that used to play in my band, who's like a creative guy with graphics and digital stuff and shooting and ideas and music and art. And another guy, a friend of his, that's a friend now, Morgan Carlson, who's also a musician and an artist. And then my guy, Mark, who is my podcaster. And we literally just immersed ourselves in this art gallery around tattoo artists and musicians and fine artists and a hairdresser and a bunch of yoga instructors and all these, and kind of started to look at fighting through this kind of creative, artistic lens where there are no rules. And it's been wild. I've never sort of had so much kind of creativity going on, not since I was in a band 10 years ago. It really has been a fascinating and exciting and really cool and liberating week.
What I think is kind of really cool about your podcast now, this is Mike, by the way, with your podcast is that
Hey, Mike.
you're not doing like the same kind of episode. It's like you have different series, like with different episodes going on in like one channel. Like you have this kind of show that you're doing and this kind of show that you're doing. Like you're really diversifying everything.
Yeah, it's so, like I was terrified. I loved my job. It was very consistent. It was stable. And what it did for me, you know, as recently as 2 weeks ago, was these guys said, come into this place and just obsess about fighting, which is what I love to do. Just immerse yourself. I didn't have to think about anything other than analyzing fighting, the world of fighting, the philosophy related to fighting, the physical stuff. And I did love that. But it also was so hyper-specialized that suddenly when we were just sitting first in my corner and now in this art gallery we're working in, I suddenly realized there's no structure. Like I don't need any kind of structure. People seem to respond really well to it. We'll talk about how fighting relates to music. We'll talk about how philosophy relates to fighting. And with that, I have a million new questions. I still want to do my breakdowns. I love doing them. I need a bit of technology to be able to do them. But in the meantime, we're just I feel like I'm in a garage band, only we deal with fighting instead of music.
At a garage band that already has a gigantic fan base too. Like, which I think you're probably seeing this now, and you don't have to. You're probably too humble to comment on this, but you know, you had the Fight Network as a Canadian, outlet, obviously. But your audience, Robin, for years has been much, much wider than that, and that's not a rip on Canada. It's just you have an international following. I mean, you're huge here in America, which is cool. And I want to get into this little. It's a question eventually, and it's first with a little story about how I think the first time you and I actually met, Robin. But I want to say this first. Selfishly, I am very happy that you're no longer working with the Fight Network, who I think for many years is a fine network, because my most significant experience with the Fight Network was having a horrible loss of mine broadcast all over Canada through the Fight Network. It's by far the fight of mine. I have a shitty amateur career. It's by far the most viewed fight of my little career, and I get all sorts of supportive, nice people like, "Hey, I saw your fight." I'm like, "Oh yeah, where?" Like, "On the Fight Network." I'm like, son of a bitch, I lost like in 45 seconds. So I'm so if they're going away from original programming and sticking to old reruns like that of Elias getting his ass kicked, I'm happy you're not associated there. But I wanted to talk about the first time I met Robin, Mike. I forget. I think it was probably 2015. I was at I don't know. You might have been anything bad. I'm not sure, but we were at Open Workouts. I forget. It was in Vegas, Robin. But I remember I was looking around and I was watching the. Open Workouts are open workouts, right? And unless you're looking for some type of expression to let you know what a fighter's mood might be like, what their weight cut might be looking like. You're looking for just the way they move, and you're just trying to observe movement, and it's kind of fun. And I looked around, and I saw one other person amongst a sea of laptops, digital notepads, cameras, which are wonderful, and video cameras and all that. I saw only one other person that had a pen or a pencil and a pad of paper. And that was Robin Black. I was like, I knew who he was, but I didn't met him. I'm like, all right, this guy's all right with me. Because you were sitting there fastidiously taking notes, observing movement, and then grabbing coaches, this type of stuff that we like to do, grabbing coaches off to the side, chatting with them. And you just have this real fascination, like you said, obsession, with obsessing over technique. And that leads me to this question. When you decided, Robin, that you wanted to make your professional career about MMA, you didn't say, okay, I'm going to go straight just into like commentary and leverage, my notoriety from a different field and just do commentary, just do interviews. You trained and then you fought. Do you think that experience as a person who spent years and years and still does train and then years and years fighting is why you're so let's not even go into how that makes you uniquely qualified to talk about fighting, because it does. But let's just talk about how it makes you uniquely fascinated. Is that really the root of why you're able to do so much work on the technique portion, because you're a fighter?
Yeah, that's part of it, I think, for sure. But fighting changed my life. It changed the way that I looked at the world. It changed, like having, you have goals, you have dates, you have things that you have to achieve, you have weight that you need to make, you have improvements that have to be accomplished on a schedule of time. I fought for, I guess, maybe almost 4 years. I fought 9 times. The first fight I had was 10 days before my 39th birthday. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to do it. I realized at first, I thought, this is something I desperately want to do, and if I go in there and fight, maybe, that will be helpful. But even before I had my first fight, I knew no matter what happened, I was going to live that life for a few years and really immerse myself in it. I think that you can analyze things on a fairly good level without fighting, but I think there's a lot of truth you can never really understand. And you see it when you see somebody, and, people will talk about sparring. Oh, well, I spar or whatever. It's not the same. It'll never be the same. You can never truly understand it. And even you don't understand what you don't understand until you get in there. And then when you do it, I find it so curious and so strange and so beautiful and so unique, and you're so incredibly alive. As you know, when you're in there in your underwear and thousands of people are watching you, really put yourself out like that. You're so alive that I just really want to find the right words to describe it. And after 8 years, I still haven't found them. So I'm studying technique, I'm studying growth, I'm studying the sort of the things that you learn by striving and how they apply to other things. I'm studying all those, but I continue to study language and try to understand language, because we don't yet, in the English language, we don't have the words to describe what fighting is. And I've tried fucking thousands of words, and I've tried them in thousands of combinations, and I've tried them enthusiastically. I've tried them through art, I've tried them through music, I've tried them through sport and physics and physiology, and I still can't quite describe it. And I think that desire to have people really understand that this is the pinnacle of human achievement and expression, that I don't think I'll ever achieve the being able to describe it the way that I want. And I think that drives me to keep going further and going forward. This is the most. I saw something that Rogan did with Julie Kedzie, just a little clip of it, and he was talking about a fight from last week, Darren Elkins. Mm-hmm. And Joe just about broke down crying, and I know exactly how he feels. There is something so unbelievably, uniquely special about these moments. And I feel like media, the media that we have that covers it, does a piss-poor job of getting that across. And I see it as one of my purposes in life is to tell that story properly.
I love it, man. Let's talk about UFC 210. I was watching your guys' preview on your channel, Robin. We're here with Robin Black. If you haven't already, you got to subscribe to his new YouTube channel. He's got just an explosion of quality content and new programs there right now, and lots more coming. And he has him and his partner have a great preview of UFC 210's main event, a rematch, light heavyweight title on the line, Daniel Cormier versus Anthony Rebel Johnson. Robin, I want to get your take. We want to get your take on this, like on the fight. And you could phrase it any way you want. Me and Mike were thinking, we were watching your preview, and it seems like, although you don't have a solid answer, because it's a hard fight to predict, right? You do have some things that you think are really important questions that, depending on how they're answered, will kind of determine the result of it. I know there's things like, age differences, improvements of this fighter or that fighter. Like, what do you think this fight is really going to come down to? What are some of the key questions of DC versus Rumble 2?
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. I'm going to Buffalo for it. I think I'm going to contribute a couple things for UFC.com there, which is really fun to do. Yeah, but a couple of things. I never make fight picks anymore. They don't make sense to me because the deeper you look, you get more questions, and I think sharing those questions and pointing people to them, that's what I like to do. I publicly say that the more that I study, the less certain I am, and I believe that. And maybe that will shift as I start to look deeper in the years and beyond. But right now, on my YouTube, it's something I'm going to start in the next couple of weeks. I have a dog, a Chihuahua. His name is Pluto. He's old and he's crusty and he's missing most of his teeth and he smells bad. And I'm going to do Pluto's picks.
Yeah.
I'm literally going to have my dog randomly pick, and I suspect he's going to do about as well as most educated people out there, which is going to be really fun. I think at this level, realistically, at today, it comes down to performance. And I think DC's only loss to John Jones, his ability to perform, particularly in rounds 4 and 5, cost him the fight. The ability to ask more of himself. He could have won that fight. And then AJ against Dan, the ability to ask enough of himself and not sort of, feel succumb to momentum when something went wrong, that lost him the fight. And so how did he learn from that? I mean, because the basics are pretty evident. Cormier has phenomenal wrestling and top control, and he's heavy when he's on you. But we think that he can just automatically take AJ down because he did. But Anthony stopped Phil Davis repeatedly, who's a elite guy. Anthony moves his feet when he's confident. If he stops that first takedown, he's on his way to winning that fight. But Cormier on the feet is really, really interesting too. He throws his left hand after his power right stepping that closes distance in a really fascinating way, because you move away from him because you're fearing that he's going to go to your hips. Yeah. And he steps into that space with this left hook on the end of it. And I know that Anthony Johnson has spotted that, and I know some of his coaches, and I know that's something they've seen. But seeing it and then dealing with the speed of that is very different. So I think you got to really watch out for Daniel Cormier's stepping left hook on the end of a stepping three-punch combination. It's really tough to deal with. It's almost like it's an add-on to the old day of the overhand right to the double leg. The old Chuck Liddell era.
That used to be the first punch wrestlers would learn, for that reason, to set up their takedown.
Exactly. Yeah, and if your hands came up, they went down, and if your hands didn't come up, they punched you. And fighting is just many more layers of some of those same principles. But really, it's if AJ comes in there with the true belief in his skin and his blood that he's going to win that fight, I think he can win that fight. I think he absolutely can. He can, but he has to have that, because Dan has that every single fight. Like we did see little tiny cracks in humanity in Dan, in rounds 4 and 5 against John Jones. So it'll be tough to say, man. But the days I'm really starting to get away from. I feel like we've accepted certain things as true that are no longer true in the way that we talk about fighting. We really compartmentalize it. We used to say this guy's striking is better than this guy, but this guy's wrestling is better than that guy. We're still doing that. We've just added more categories. His takedown defense is better than his, but his offensive wrestling is better. And this guy's got better range management, but this guy has good volume. It's not Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I mean? We can't. These are humans, ever-changing human beings who perform differently in different moments depending on where they are. And so I really, truly believe in a case like this, with guys like this who know each other on that level, it comes down to who is better in the moment itself. And when the answer is they're both in the 99th percentile of their ability to express combat in that moment, you get something like Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler. That's when you get that elite level of performance. That's what happens. Neither man able to influence the other's thinking at all. You have to break one physically. And if we get that fight with these two, we'll see one of the greatest fights we've ever seen.
When you're watching, fighters to do one of these previews and breakdowns, how much video do you watch to notice these things, and how many times do you have to watch it over? One of the ones that sticks out is when you broke down the choke that allowed Nate Diaz to beat Conor McGregor at UFC 196, and you talk about how he punched to free the chin. Like, how many times do you watch it through to find these little details? Like, do you have to watch it 4 times?
I see them. I feel them. There's something... part of why I sound so evangelical about fighting is somewhere in the process of studying martial arts, I kind of changed the way I experience the fight, if that makes sense. So in the moment, I see most of this stuff. I see it I don't know, it's very hard to explain, but I watched a show on super tasters and people who, are able to, their abilities to taste are developed. And there's similarities to that kind of thing. I don't know, it's hard to explain. But then on some of the breakdowns where I break down the video footage and I choose moment by moment to tell the story and then flow it and do it in front of the TV, in most of those I'll kind of watch everything. And when I see patterns kind of develop, I may watch things a third and a fourth and a fifth time. I might watch them in slow motion. I'll watch them with sound off. I'll watch them with music on, just trying to get to peel back the layers of it. There's so much going on, and there's so much there that it's become strangely like I'm finding another gear on how to peel back these layers, because I used to be hyper decisive about it. Okay, this means this, and I want to express that. Now I've become way more open-ended with it. What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What does it feel? What's the texture? All of those kinds of things. So it goes through different flows. And then sometimes you get into I'm training most every day now. So you get into doing things with your own body to try to understand what you're seeing so it becomes physical. It's just the greatest experience. I don't know. Even talking about it, I feel excited. This is the most special thing in the world, that two people have trained a lifetime to come together in an unpredictable moment that we get to see. And it really, I feel that we don't, as a group, do a very good job of describing it. We were in a hurry. We're on to what are they fighting, who's fighting next, and we were talking about all these weird mechanisms. The rankings is a mechanism. It's not a real thing. It's a mechanism. Even the belt itself is some mechanism there to sell something. The fight between the artists is the thing, and that's what I'm hyper focused on. But I don't think I answered your question very well.
No, you did.
I'm just doing it all day, all the time.
Yeah. You answered it. I would never have thought to turn off the sound and watch a fight with music playing. Like I like to work with music playing on in the background, but I've never thought to do that while watching video of a fight.
That's pretty cool.
It's and it changes. If you put on metal, it's a very different experience. I really like my soundtrack for fighting is classical music. There's just something about it. There's an intensity to it, and it's not, different songs and different eras. But you can put punk rock on. Country music only works when Dan Henderson is fighting. It really changes it. Even how you light it, and when watching fights alone for me is very different than with a group of people. Yeah. With a group of people, I tend to find that I want to kind of commentate it. So I'm saying things out. My friends seem to enjoy it. At least they keep coming over and drinking tequila when I do it. But I just want to describe it, which is why, ultimately my goal is to commentate the UFC on some level. If I'm on Fight Pass in Macau doing it, I'm happy. But I'm getting some commentary gigs too. I'm doing TKO 38. April 7th on Fight Pass, and ACB in Russia is flying me out in the week later to talk to them about doing some commentary. And so I'm getting to that. KSW has had conversations about me commentating for them. So, I'm getting to do that. That ultimately is the next layer, is in real time, take the description, do justice to what's happening, and find the right way to be able to balance enthusiasm, the art form, the sport, the audience's awareness, teach them without them knowing it and feeling like you're teaching them. That's ultimately the next layer. And even beyond that, I feel like I can do these breakdowns in real time with a button to press, to talk back to the producer, to pull together something that I can break down between rounds and between fights. And I know that's accomplishable. I'm talking to ACB about doing it as well. So I know that's the next step, is to be able to, in the moments themselves, break it down in ways that the audience would find interesting and fun.
It seems like World Series of Fighting, they juggled a lot of play-by-play and commentators during the show. There might be an opportunity for you there. But one of my favorite Robin Black moments is I was at a UFC fight. I think it was one of the fights leading up to UFC 194, the Conor McGregor-Jose Aldo fight. And you were sitting in the media room backstage watching it with Richard Hunter, and I was at the table behind you doing the media scrums after the fights and uploading the video and running back and forth. But when I was at the computer, I have one earbud in listening to the sound and the other listening to you and Richard Hunter talk about the fights. And it was fascinating. I know you can do it in real time because I've watched a fight that way before, and it was really incredible.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks, man. I don't know. I feel like no matter what, I just feel lucky that the thing that I love to do, I'm doing all day, all the time. And if you do something all day, all the time, and you're eternally curious, it's going to go further. And you're going to become even more curious, and you're going to find answers that will raise new questions. And that's what I'm doing. And the last 8 days, I've been trying to document that and take it somewhere and stuff. And it has been really, really fun. I'm blown away by how many people have been supportive and sharing the stuff and giving me feedback and stuff. I feel like I'm in a pretty cool moment of change. I don't know exactly where I'm going to be in a month, but some pretty cool things are happening. And it's good talking to you guys about it.
Man, it's been awesome having you on, Robin. I know we kept you on longer than we said we would, but it was a lot of fun. And you're not far. You're not far from us, man. We got to get you in studio sometime in Chicago. I know I'm going to get my ass over to Toronto one of these days. We'll have to get some training in and break down some fights together, brother.
Yeah, man, and come, I don't know if we'll be in a studio by then, but come on and chat with me, too.
Love to.
But, hey, I love Chicago, man. If you got a couch, I'll come down for a weekend just for the hell of it.
We got an extra bedroom.
Yeah.
What do you got, Mike?
I got a guest bedroom, too.
Yeah,
You're covered.
We got 2 guest bedrooms, man, between our households, brother. We'll make it happen for sure.
Okay. Good. And thanks for all the kind words, guys. Like, it really means a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
It's all true, man. We're so excited for everything you're doing right now. Guys, we've been on with Robin Black. You got to check him out at his new YouTube channel. Robin, where can they find you on social media?
On Twitter at Robin Black MMA and on Facebook at The Robin Black. And I put all our YouTube stuff up there. You don't even get to have your own YouTube name for 30 days, and we're only 8 days in. I got like 4,500 subscribers or something. It's wild. It's been crazy.
That's so awesome, man. It's so well-deserved, too, man. People are hungry for what you got to offer, brother, and we're excited for you, and we'd love to have you on again soon, my friend.
I can't wait. I cannot wait. And get the guest bedrooms ready. I'm going to do one night at each of you.
Yeah, boy. It's on. It's on. Awesome, Rob. Well, thanks, brother. We'll let you go.
Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work. Enjoy the hostilities, my friend.
Thank you, sir. You too. Well, that was a lot of fun, man.
Best the catchphrase or line in media is like a thing, but not necessarily in MMA media so much.
Yeah.
And like enjoy the hostilities. It's just like
it's so
the best
good.
one. I love it.
It's so, and he really does enjoy it. And you get 2 things with this guy. You get a sincere enthusiasm that's based in appreciation, not of being an access journalist and being a sycophant. And you also get real, informed technical analysis. And that's pretty damn valuable. I love that about that guy.
That one fight when I was watching, listening to him talk was just, it was fascinating to see. Because like you see a fight, like I watch a fight and I see certain things, or there's certain things that I notice. But like somebody else, to get somebody else's perspective, and he's he never breaks focus, and he's breaking it down and pointing out all sorts of things. It was super interesting. I'd love to see him kind of get into that role. And,
you do great. I've watched some fights with him in the room too.
Yeah.
I've gone left from the ringside to come up and watch a few. It's a lot of fun. He's got a great way of breaking stuff down. He can definitely do it in real time.
Well, that wraps up our show for the day. It was a good one. We had Robin Black joining us. He does his breakdowns. He has his new YouTube channel where he's doing his own podcast, and there's like 4 podcasts within his podcast. He has like all these different kind of segments. Make sure to check that out and subscribe on YouTube, and also make sure to look out for the Jose Shorty Torres that we uploaded from video or interview that we did yesterday. The audio is already uploaded to iTunes and Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, all of the podcast apps. The video is going to be posted to Fansided soon, and hopefully on the social media accounts, Facebook page as well. So make sure to tune that out. We also have interviews with the fighters of Bellator 175 coming the end of this week. And we have Bas Rutten tomorrow. We don't normally do shows on Thursdays. Normally we only do it on Wednesdays, but we're going to be back tomorrow. I believe it's like 1 o'clock Central is when we're going to do it. So an hour earlier than we usually do on Wednesday. But we're going to talk about his new show that he's doing with Champions. It's really wild. I don't know if you guys have been able to see the first episode, but make sure to tune in tomorrow for that as well. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.